Unearthed Secrets: The Sinister Post-Mortem Photograph of the Prescott Brothers, 1858, revealed. Dust floated in rays of waning sunlight as Claire opened the attic door. A musty scent enveloped her, wrapping around her throat like a cold hand. Boxes, piled high and teetering, seemed to whisper secrets from the forgotten past. With a reluctant breath, she dug into the box labeled "Donations," seeking clothes to give away. But what she pulled from the depths of darkness sent ice spiraling through her veins. A weathered post-mortem photograph of the Prescott brothers, their lifeless eyes staring back, almost alive. An inexplicable chill traced her spine, like fingers encroaching on her sanity. What had she uncovered? That evening, the boundaries of her quiet life began to blur. Creaking floorboards echoed in the stillness, accompanied by the disquieting rustle of wind, whispering her name. Crouched in her bedroom, an unbearable tension unfolded around her, spiking her heart's rhythm. Shivers prickled her skin as if unseen eyes were watching. When the porch swing began to sway, creaking with a life of its own, dread filled the air. Was something, or someone, in her midst? The next day, the boys faced taunts from local kids who whispered, "Cursed Prescott brothers," conspiratorial grins passing among them. Jake and Max exchanged horrified glances, their curiosity ignited. She felt the weight of her own growing fears as inspiration struck. She needed to learn more. Online searches became her obsession. Library archives, dusty and ancient, revealed a dark web woven through the town, the Prescott family's legacy entwined with Willow Creek's roots, a pact as chilling as the cold sweat on her back. Late at night, with only the moon to bear witness, Claire lay in bed, heart hammering against her chest, cultivating doubt that clawed at her mind. A gust of icy wind lunged through her window, fluttering her curtains like restless spirits. Then, a shadow loomed just beyond the glass, fading as she shot up in alarm. The fear coiled tighter and tighter, until she was tangled in it, alone, and didn't dare share her suspicions with anyone. What would they think of her? But the whispers grew louder in her head. Before we continue, I need to tell you something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to their system, and many people are missing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and select all notifications so you don't miss future videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. The next day, the streets of Willow Creek felt like grave markers, remnants of laughter suffocated by the weight of secrets. Shadows lurked around corners as she prowled, the townspeople oblivious or silently complicit, save for the mayor who stood as an unsettling figure of misplaced trust. Her breath hitched at the thought that the grime of horror could root deep into those she called friends. Had she placed her faith in the very heart of darkness? As she veered into the darkness of her home, the photo deep in her pocket felt fiery against her skin, bursting with secrets yet untold. Her heart pounded, and every flicker of movement in the corner of her vision gripped her with terror. Then, laughter, soft yet menacing, poured through the corridors, haunting her like a faded memory. The line between reality and nightmare blurred, suffocating her with each breath. A sudden realization hit her: the Prescott brothers had meant to stay buried, their legacy twisted and cursed, and now they were awake, clawing their way back to reclaim what was theirs. Was she truly ready to face what lurked in the shadows? With dread pooling in her belly, Claire gazed into the photograph. She had unearthed more than mere relics of the past, she had opened a door to horrors that were meant to remain dormant. As a chill snaked up her spine, she understood one agonizing truth: darkness had its eyes set on her and her sons. The sound of whispering shadows filled Claire's head the next day. It was as if the Prescott brothers had invaded her thoughts, invading the very fabric of her reality. She couldn't shake the dread that wrapped around her like a suffocating blanket. She made breakfast for her boys, but the usual warmth of the kitchen felt cold. Everyone's laughter was stifled, replaced by an ominous weight clawing at her throat. After sending them off to school, Claire found herself drawn back to the attic. The room was a time capsule, and every item whispered forgotten tales. She climbed the creaking stairs, each step echoing loudly in the silence. As she opened the box again, her heart raced. The sepia photograph rested in her trembling hands, the Prescott brothers staring back, frozen in time, their eyes glistening with a disturbing brightness. A sudden surge of anger mixed with fear bubbled to the surface. She had to know who they were, she had to understand what had awakened. She spent the next few hours gathering notes, piecing together their history. They lived only a stone's throw from her home, their legacy marred by tragedy that echoed through the ages. Local folklore spoke of jealousy and vengeance, the brothers cursed by a pact gone horribly wrong. A voice in her head warned her to stop, but curiosity was an insatiable beast, gnawing at her resolve. That evening, as she sat alone, Claire noticed the picture was slightly askew. Oddly, the brothers' eyes seemed to shift, glancing toward her as if wanting to share their secrets. Goosebumps erupted over her skin. Just then, a knock resonated through the house. It was a dull, rhythmic pounding that set her heart racing. She glanced toward the door, a frigid fear coursing through her veins. Who could it be? She whispered to herself, her voice trembling. With hesitant steps, she approached the door, every creak of the floorboard seeming to shout a warning. The chill in the air sharpened as she grasped the doorknob, its cold surface biting into her palm. With a deep breath, she swung the door open. Standing there was an elderly woman, her eyes shadowed and haunted. "You need to listen to me," she rasped, her voice raw, laced with desperation. "The Prescott boys, they need something from you." Claire's stomach twisted, her mind racing with fear and anticipation. "What do you mean?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. The woman stepped closer, her face a mask of sorrow. "You've stirred them, and now they want to reclaim what was taken from them. It won't stop until you confront their curse." Suddenly the air in the room turned thick, as if the walls themselves were closing in. Shadows curled around Claire's feet, creeping forward, and the laughter she had heard before rose again, mocking and sinister. "Please, you must be careful," the woman warned, her eyes wide with fear. "You cannot trust what you see or hear. They'll twist your reality." And, just as abruptly, the woman turned and vanished into the shadows, leaving Claire standing alone in the threshold. Had she unleashed something she couldn't control? Panic coursed through her, but deeper still, her mind churned with a question that ignited her resolve: what could the Prescott brothers truly want? The photograph felt warm against her skin once more, the chill in the air intensifying. As her heart raced, one undeniable truth crashed over her: whatever twisted fate awaited her, she was exactly where they wanted her. But for what? As the shadows deepened around her, Claire realized she had crossed a line. There was no turning back. Now, all she could do was wait for the darkness to reveal its intentions. The following night, Claire lay wide awake, staring at the ceiling. The shadows danced along the walls, twisting and bending in the moonlight. It felt like the Prescott brothers were lurking, waiting. The chilling sensation returned, creeping through her body like a poison. Each breath she took heavy with dread. At dawn, she decided enough was enough. Claire refused to be a passive spectator in this relentless nightmare. She grabbed her phone and began searching for any old books or articles regarding the Prescott brothers. Her fingers trembled with urgency, scrolling through faded pages filled with dark tales, their twisted destinies etched in every line. 3 brothers bound by blood, cursed by greed, one article stated, the words soaking into her mind. Legend whispers that they would return in busca of retribution. Claire's heart thudded. Retribution. The word echoed ominously, enough to send her stumbling back from the screen. A sudden thought struck her. What if there was a way to break the curse? If she could uncover the pact they made so long ago, perhaps she could protect herself and her boys. With newfound determination, Claire realized that her next step had to be in the very place where their story began. The Prescott estate. The small, crumbling house loomed in the distance, a decaying shadow amidst the bright morning sun. The wind howled as she approached it, warning her to turn back. But a voice deep within urged her forward. Claire's breath quickened as she unlocked the rusted gate. It creaked, sounding almost like the moan of a trapped spirit. Inside, she was enveloped by an overwhelming silence. Dust particles swirled in rays of sunlight streaming through shattered windows. The atmosphere vibrated with sadness, as if the house itself was mourning. Every small sound echoed through the empty rooms, a hollow reminder of what once was. Claire began her exploration. Each room whispered secrets, the air thick with memories of the Prescott brothers. There had to be some clue. She pushed through cobwebs and debris, her pulse racing with every creaking floorboard beneath her feet. Time seemed to slip away as she searched, sifting through remnants of the past. Then, in a dark corner of the library, a leather-bound journal caught her eye. It was faded and torn, but she could still make out the initials, J.P. Joshua Prescott. As she opened the pages, the musty smell engulfed her, and her heart skipped a beat. The scrawled handwriting danced across the pages. Joshua wrote of dreams tainted by blood, of rituals, and an insatiable hunger for power that would bind them eternally. Her hands shook, but she couldn't look away. She read about offerings made to forgotten shadows, each sacrifice twisting the very fabric of life and death. Suddenly, a chill swept through the room, sending icy fingers down her spine. The shadows stirred around her, coiling like serpents. Claire's breath quickened. Had her presence drawn them near? She needed to finish reading the journal. Just as she turned to the last page, she felt a heavy presence behind her. The temperature plummeted. With a trembling hand, she rubbed her eyes, hoping it was just her imagination. But when she turned back, Claire's heart sank. There, standing in the doorway, were three figures, three brothers clothed in gray, their eyes glowing with an unnatural light. "What have you done?" one of them hissed, stepping closer. There was anger, desperation in his voice. The others stood like statues, ominous and unreadable. Claire's instinct screamed at her to run, but curiosity reigned. She had awakened them, true, but perhaps she was also the key to breaking their bondage. "I'm here to help you," she said, her voice quivering. But as darkness tightened around her, she wondered if perhaps she had miscalculated. Behind the brothers, shadows loomed larger, ready to swallow her whole. The air thickened as the figures advanced, their intentions unclear, but Claire knew this was just the beginning of the horrors that awaited her. Was confrontation truly her only option? Or would she become another lost soul, claimed by the Prescott legacy? The three brothers advanced, their expressions a mixture of rage and desperation. Claire's mind raced, searching for words that could bridge the gap between them. But no sooner had she opened her mouth than a low growl resonated from the shadows, a sound that curled around her like a cold breath. The darkness thickened, as if the very walls were collapsing inward. "Help!" one of the brothers sneered, the glow in his eyes flickering like a candle nearing its end. "There is no help for us." Behind him, the shadows deepened. Claire could hear whispering now, a cacophony of lost voices hovering just beyond her reach. She felt the journal slip from her hand, landing with a muted thud against the dusty floor, as if the knowledge she sought was drawn away by the very essence of the brothers' anguish. "What do you mean?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Terrified, she instinctively backed away, her hands raised in a placating gesture. "I can break the curse. I can set you free. This curse is your making." The brother in gray barked. "Our blood stains the earth still, because of greed. And you have stirred the darkness." The looming shadow behind them pulsed, stretching impossibly as it writhed. It slithered forward, filled with faces twisted in agony. Claire's breath caught in her throat as a shape, almost human but grotesque in its form, emerged from the depths of despair. "There is no unbinding," another brother declared, his voice sad, as if they carried the weight of the world. "Only sacrifice." Claire's mind reeled. Sacrifice? Her mind flooded with horrific images of the dark rituals Joshua had described in the journal. Furtive glances back at her own boys back home filled her with dread. What would it take to appease these spirits? The shadow lunged forward, its grotesque maw opening wide. Claire felt paralyzed, terror anchoring her feet to the floor. The brother in gray nearest to her raised his hand, a flicker of something softer showing through his steely facade. "Do you dare to know what it requires?" he asked, his voice low and haunting. Just as she steeled herself to answer, a sharp scream reverberated through the air, piercing Claire's thoughts. It echoed, a sound that seemed to meld with the very walls of the decrepit house. It came from outside her boys. "No!" she shrieked, breaking the spell. Without thinking, she turned and bolted toward the doorway, propelled by maternal instinct. But, in an instant, the brothers reached out in unison, fingers curling around her arms with an icy grip. "Do not walk away," the first brother growled, his breath a hollow whisper. "Your fate is intertwined with ours." In that moment, Claire realized she stood at a crossroads. A single decision could rip her from this nightmare or plunge her deeper into the abyss. She could feel the shadows tightening their hold, their anger pulsating in the air. "What do you want from me?" Claire could hardly breathe, panic pinching her heart. "Sacrifice your fear," the third brother intoned, his voice steady. "Face the truth of what was done. Only then will you see the path forward." And your sons. An overwhelming surge of dread filled her. Sacrificing fear felt impossible, an empty promise that left her more vulnerable than ever. Yet, what could she lose? Or gain? "Your time runs thin," the brothers warned as Claire stared into the swirling darkness, their faces blending into the shadows they summoned. As the temperature dropped further, Claire realized the looming question was far from over. What if the sacrifice I make leads to ruin? The brothers' laughter echoed, a fatalistic sound that reverberated through the decrepit halls, swallowing her doubt. They faded slowly back into the shadows, their forms indistinct amid the blackness. The weight of the choice pressed heavily on Claire, the very air vibrating with uncertainty. Had she awakened something far worse? Would she bring doom to her loved ones? With her heart pounding, Claire understood sometimes, the path to freedom winds straight through unfathomable darkness. And as the shadows breathed around her, something stirred beyond the door. She needed to know what waited outside, and if she dared to meet it. Would she have the strength to face it all? Claire's heart raced as she flung open the door, the wood creaking ominously on its hinges. The moon hung low, spilling its ghostly light like liquid silver over the yard. Her eyes searched frantically for her boys, the frantic pounding of her heart drowning out the night sounds. "Mason! Jake!" she shouted, the names tearing from her throat in desperation. The silence that returned felt suffocating, a heavy blanket smothering her calls. Shadows danced in the corner of her eye, dark figures swirling just out of reach, teasing her with their presence. The brothers' warnings echoed in her mind, a dire reminder that time slipped through her fingers like sand. Suddenly, a movement caught her attention. From behind the trees, a figure stepped into the moonlight. Claire's breath caught there, staggering and frightened, was Mason. His eyes were wide, glistening with unshed tears. "Mom!" he cried, rushing toward her, relief spilling over him like a wave. But Claire's heart plummeted when she noticed the dirt-streaked marks on his shirt, as if he had been wrestling with something grotesque in the earth. "Mason! Where's Jake?" Fear clawed at her throat, a tightness that threatened to stifle her breath. I don't know." Mason stammered, glancing over his shoulder. "We were exploring the woods and then I heard this sound. It was terrible. Like something screaming." Claire's mind raced back to the brothers' curse, their faces twisted in despair. "Stay close to me," she yelled, pulling him into the safety of her embrace. Before she could ask more, a low, gravelly growl rumbled through the trees, ripping through the uneasy silence. The sounds twisted into a chorus of whispers, the brothers' voices echoing her worst fears. "Mason!" she urged, her grip tightening. "We need to find Jake." As if summoned by her words, the shadows shifted violently. From the brambles, something large emerged, lurching forward with a grotesque, lumbering gait. It was a figure, twisted and moving with an unnatural speed. Claire's instincts screamed for safety, mobility, anything but to stand frozen in horror. "Mom! Mason screamed, tearing away from her grip. His eyes were wide with fear as he stumbled backward. The spectral figure drew closer, its features indistinct but holding an unmistakable countenance of despair. Claire felt her blood turn to ice. "Run! We have to go." She lunged towards her son, but something in the air, an undefined force, pushed her back, grounding her in place. "No!" she cried out, eyes darting to Mason. But he was already a few steps away, caught between the dissonance of flight and that primal urge to turn and fight. The air tightened as the ghastly figure drew closer, hands clawing at its own haunting form, emitting an indistinct howl that clawed at Claire's very soul. "Mason, it's a trick!" she shouted. "Come back!" But her son was paralyzed by fear, entranced by the horror that was bearing down on them. Then Claire felt it, the weight of the brother's curse pressing against her, threatening to envelop her and her son. The shadows cast eerie shapes in the moonlight as if mocking her anxiety. With sudden clarity, she knew what she must do. The brothers had mentioned sacrifice, but what if they meant something beyond fear? What if the key lay in love? In her love for her sons? "Mason!" she cried, forcing out every ounce of love she felt. "You have to trust me." The air shimmered, a strong pulse of energy leaping between them. "Mom," he whispered, barely able to form the words. "Face the darkness with me, together," she urged, feeling her spirit ignite, but the shadows swelled greedily around them, the figure closing the distance, its anguished voice rising to a scream. Claire's heart pounded. With every ounce of will she had, she reached for her son. Would their bond stand strong against the forces of despair? Just then, a new sound broke through the chaos, a crack, deep and resonant. The earth trembled beneath their feet, and from the depths of the ground, a fissure opened, pulling them and everything around into its gaping maw. "Mom!" Mason screamed, but she gripped his hand tighter, the darkness swirling around them, merging with the essence of what she feared most. As the world faded, Claire could only hope that embracing the fear as a mother would be enough to save them from whatever nightmare awaited what lay beneath. Would they pass through this threshold, or be consumed by what they had awakened? A deafening silence enveloped Claire and Mason as the ground beneath them swallowed the world whole. The chilling sensation of falling into an abyss made Claire's stomach lurch, and she instinctively tightened her grip on Mason's hand. The oppressive darkness pressed against them, blinding and suffocating. Then, with a sudden jolt, they landed soft, unsteady ground beneath their feet. Claire blinked furiously, trying to adjust. The moonlight was distant here, muted as if filtered through layers of shadows. Fear coursed through her veins. "Mason!" she whispered harshly. Her voice echoed unnaturally in this new realm, swallowed up by the thick fog that had begun to envelop them. He stood frozen, eyes darting around in panic. "Mom, where are we?" His voice cracked, barely above a whisper. "I don't know," Claire replied, trying to keep her own fear at bay. "But we need to stay close and keep moving." She pushed forward, unsure of the direction. A chaotic symphony of low growls and distant wails began to fill the air. The sounds twisted in her mind, racing toward the back of her thoughts. Something was here, palpably watching them, lurking just out of sight. Suddenly, out of the mist, a flickering light appeared, candlelit and flickering like a memory. Claire approached cautiously, her instincts screaming danger. Mason followed, his small frame trembling beside her. As they neared, the light revealed twisted landscapes, graves scattered in disarray. Faded stones loomed like specters, their inscriptions worn and cracked. A shiver snaked down her spine when she recognized a name. Prescott. The name echoed in her mind, tying itself to the familiar stories told in hushed tones, the brothers who were said to have vanished into these woods. Mom, Mason's voice quivered, snapping her attention back. He pointed at the sinister glow. There, suspended in air above an open grave, was an old, battered photograph, its edges tattered and discolored. Claire's eyes widened in realization. It depicted the Prescott brothers, their faces warped in agony, their mouths twisted as if caught in an unholy scream. A chill crept through her, settling into her bones. "Don't look, Mason," she urged, yanking him back, but it was too late. He was already entranced, eyes wide in horror. "What happened to them?" he stammered, fear anchoring him in place. Claire pulled him away. "We can't dwell on it. We need to, but the air shifted." The howls grew louder, closer. Shadows materialized around them, visages twisted just like the photograph. They reached for the boys, hollow eyes filled with sorrowful hunger. "Mason, run!" Claire shouted, tugging him toward the dense fog, which began to swirl and close in on them. The darkness threatened to absorb them, just as it had the brothers. As they stumbled through the chilling mist, Claire could feel the shadows reaching for them, grasping at her legs like desperate hands. Panic ignited in her heart as memories of the brothers overwhelmed her. Each story had warned her about the consequences of awakening the forgotten, the danger of the buried. "Mason, listen to me. We have to find a way out." But the earth trembled again, the ground cracking, splitting further beneath their feet. Suddenly, visibility vanished. Mason shouted, the sound swallowed whole by the void, leaving Claire alone in the echoing darkness. Frantic, she turned, searching for his alarmed face, but only emptiness stared back at her. "Mason." Her voice cracked with desperation. And then she heard it, a familiar, agonizing scream echoed from the depths, growing louder, more desperate. This scream didn't belong to her son. "Mom! Help!" Mason's voice pierced through the terror that surrounded Claire, drawing her closer, yet the ground beneath began to give way. "Mason!" Claire screamed as she raced toward the sound, the breath of fear hot in her throat. She reached out, arms outstretched, but as she leapt forward, a wave of darkness crashed over her, dragging her down into the nightmare. She felt the cold pull of fear. This was the cost of awakening the secrets below. What awaited her in the shadows? Would they find each other in the depths of despair, or would the curse consume them both? Claire's heart pounded against her chest like a caged animal, struggling to break free. She fell into the darkness, swallowed whole by the dread that seemed to ooze from the very ground itself. The air was thick with an unnatural chill, wrapping around her like a suffocating shroud. With every breath, a wave of despair crashed over her, leaving her gasping for hope. The darkness shifted, swirling like a living entity, and she could barely make out forms emerging through the fog. Faces twisted with anguish and eyes without light reached out, their mouths mouthing silent screams that chilled her blood. These were the souls caught between worlds, their pain palpable and haunting. "Mason!" She called again, straining against the weight of the shadows. Each step felt like wading through molasses, an unseen force pulling her back just as she gained momentum. She closed her eyes, reminding herself this couldn't be the end. Suddenly, the sound of Mason's voice broke through again, cracked and trembling. "Mom, I'm scared. Stay close," she cried, forcing her feet forward, propelled by the sound of his voice, the last tether to her sanity. The thrumming in her chest intensified as she drew nearer, each pulse aflame with fear and determination. "Mason!" she shouted, her voice almost lost to the wails of the damned around her. She stumbled forward, driven by instinct, pushing against the dark currents. Then she saw him, a figure crouched beneath the skeletal branches of twisted trees, his small frame shivering and huddled close to the ground as if the earth could offer him protection from the horrors looming above. Relief flooded through her, albeit swiftly chased away by the shadows hungry for their souls. "Mason!" He turned, panic etched across his features. "Mom!" His voice quivered, but he stood, his feet rooted in place. "Mason, run! Come here!" The urgency in her voice cut sharply through the haze. As though a spell was broken, he propelled himself toward her, but just as their fingers almost intertwined, the ground beneath him erupted. She watched in horror as Mason fell through a gaping fissure that appeared from the earth, shrieks echoing in its wake. "Mason!" She screamed, lunging forward, but strong hands suddenly grasped her shoulders, pulling her back. The shadows racked their grip around her, solid and unyielding. "Let him go!" she yelled, fury swelling within, but the hands were bone-cold and relentless. A face emerged from the mist, one of the tortured souls, eyes dull yet alive with unspeakable agony. "They cannot be saved," it rasped, voice like sandpaper. "You seek the truth, but the truth is a curse that binds." Claire's mind raced. What truth? What curse? Her heart thundered with a mix of dread and fury. If Mason was lost, she'd take the shadows down with her. With newfound desperation, she kicked back at the phantom, breaking free, and darted toward where Mason had fallen. As she reached the edge of the crack, she peered into the abyss, darkness swirling like a whirlpool beneath her. "Mason! Can you hear me?" Silence. Her heart dropped. Sudden doubt clawed at her. What if a memory flickered, a whispered tale about the brothers, how they had vanished never to return, ensnared by the very shadows they tried to escape? "Mom! Help!" Mason's muffled cries ignited her fear. She had to save him, she had to find a way. With bated breath, Claire leaned further into the void, her fingers clutching the edge. "Just hold on. I'm coming." But the shadows surged, coiling around her, surrounding her in their icy grip. Something cold brushed against her leg, followed by a sensation of being pulled downward. She yanked back, panic flooding her as she felt the edges of her reality slip. "Mason!" But the shadows were relentless. They hissed, whispering secrets of despair, promising her that hope was a cruel illusion. Then she felt that something was rising from the depths. A grotesque figure began to emerge, tenebrous and monstrous, a silhouette against the inky black. "What have you awakened?" it bellowed, its voice echoing through the very fabric of this nightmare. Claire's instincts screamed for retreat, but she was frozen, a decision bearing down heavy as time stretched, the peril inching closer. Was she truly ready to face what lay hidden in this darkness? "Mom!" Mason cried out once more, his frantic voice breaking her paralysis. She had to choose. What was the cost of uncovering the truth? Would she risk everything to save her son, or would the darkness claim them both? The monster lunged, and all she could do was scream. The monster's maw gaped wide, its jagged teeth glinting in the faint, ghostly light from the crack. Claire staggered back, heart racing, but the shadows clutched her tightly, refusing to let go. Panic clawed at her throat like 1,000 icy fingers. "Mason!" she shouted, the name feeling like a desperate prayer swallowed by the darkness. The creature twisted and writhed, towering above her, its form obscured by the thick, dark mist. The air around her vibrated with its malignant energy, pushing against her chest, constricting her breath. It spoke again, voice booming and blending with the whispers of the damned. "What do you seek? You tread on sacred ground. You disturb the resting, and the rest shall pay." Claire's heart sank. She remembered the old tales, the ones the townsfolk whispered in hushed, chilling tones, the Prescott brothers, lured into the shadows and never seen again. She recalled their famished eyes, pleading for a release from this prison of torment. What price would she have to pay? "Let him go!" Claire shouted, rage overtaking her fear. "I didn't ask for any of this. I just want my son." A low, guttural laugh rumbled from the creature. "You profess bravery, yet the truth is a shackle. He belongs to the shadows now. Accept this fate, or join him in despair." "No!" Claire screamed, fury igniting every inch of her. She felt the cold tendrils of the darkness try to wrap around her ankles, trying to drag her down, but she fought against it. She wasn't done yet. Mason needed her, and she refused to succumb. Straining against the darkness, Claire pulled herself closer to the gaping fissure. She could sense the evil emanating from the depths, felt its malevolence tugging at her with a familiar dread. Wrapping her arms around the edge, she leaned in, peering into the void. "Mason! Can you hear me?" Silence filled the abyss before Mason's voice returned, faint but undeniably present. "Mom! Please! Help me!" "No!" The monster roared, the shadows recoiling as it lunged at her. "Stop, child! Or be lost alongside him." With a fierce determination, Claire thrust her hands forward, her fingertips barely grazing the edge of the darkness. She could feel it pulling her, a gravitational force, but she refused to back down. "I won't leave you, Mason. I'm coming for you." Desperation filled her voice, driving away the fear, and suddenly, another voice cut through the shadows, eerily familiar, an echo of lost memories. Claire she turned, heart-stopping. It was a spectre, but this one was different, visibly wearing a face of pain mixed with something resembling compassion. "You must understand, the past can never be rewritten," he said, his tones laced with regret. "You cannot save him without losing a piece of yourself." "Who are you?" Claire asked, bewildered. "I am one of them, one of the lost. The Prescott brothers are my kin." "Your kin? Where is Mason?" She felt the shadows tightening around her. "The truth dwells in the depths. The cost will be your essence, but it can also set him free." The realization hit Claire like a slap. She felt a shiver of fear run down her spine. "What do you mean? What do I have to do?" "Enter the void and make your choice. Hope waits on the other side, or despair claims you." The monster loomed larger, writhing like an unspeakable horror, almost laughing in anticipation. Claire took a breath, filled with the weight of her despair, heart racing. She felt the cold lapping at her skin like waves drawing her down. Could she truly plunge into the dark depths to save her son? "Take my hand." Mason's voice resounded from within the darkness, stronger, desperate. "I won't leave you." She cried again, staring at the monster, unyielding. "I won't let fear take my son." But as she leaned further into the darkness, the cold surrendering against her skin, Claire could feel the world blurring. Would she uncover the truth only to unleash a horror worse than she could imagine? The walls of her reality began to tremble and crack, shadows swirling violently around her, closing in as she moved forward. The darkness seemed to breathe. The question echoed in the pit of her mind: what awaited on the other side? Then, a terrible silence fell, and she was gone. The darkness enveloped Claire, a shroud that deepened with each breath she took. She felt weightless, suspended in a void where time stepped quietly away. The shrill whispers of despair pulled at her, tugging her mind in all directions. Then, abruptly, she landed hard. She gasped, the breath exploding from her lungs like a startled scream. The world around her was awash in an unsettling gray, unfamiliar shapes flickering just beyond comprehension. Shadows danced, teasing her senses, and somewhere in the distance, she thought she could hear Mason calling her name. "Mason!" She shouted, but her voice twisted into an echo, falling dead in the barren air, swallowed whole. She pushed herself up from the cold, hard ground, and blinked wildly. The landscape was both familiar and foreign, a twisted reflection of the woods she knew, the tree trunks warped and blackened, their branches reaching like skeletal fingers. In the distance, she saw silhouettes moving, darting between the trees. Were they the Prescott brothers, trapped souls lingering in this endless twilight? A sudden chill settled over her. She wrapped her arms around herself and glanced around, her instincts screaming that she was not alone. The whispers returned, but they formed words, chilling and beckoning. Join us, where are you?" Claire's voice trembled, forcing the words out. "Mason." But only silence answered, thick and oppressive. Drawing a deep breath, she stepped forward, her shoes crunching against something brittle on the ground bones. She recoiled, her heart hammering in alarm. With each step, the shadows twisted into glimpses of movement, a flash of dark hair, the flash of a tattered shirt, the hollow gaze of a child lost forever. Claire's breath caught. Were they real? Or mere projections of her terror? "Leave her!" A voice burst through, firm and resolute. A figure rushed forward, pushing aside the shadows. It was a boy, perhaps Mason's age, with wild eyes and a look of desperate urgency. "Don't listen to them. They lie." Who are you?" Claire demanded, bewildered. Fear mingled with hope. "I'm Liam. I was trapped here too." He looked around, his expression intense. "They'll try to take you. You need to find the light, it's the only way." "Liam." A haunting voice echoed, shattering the brief moment of hope. The shadows writhed violently, and Claire realized they pulsed like a heartbeat, fueled by fear and despair. "But Mason," she stuttered, her heart torn. "He's in there." Liam motioned toward a white flicker in the distance, where the shadows dance most fiercely. "If you care for him, take the light." She hesitated. "What if the light betrays me? What if it's another trap?" "Then you'll fade into the darkness just like the rest," he said sharply, eyes narrowing. Claire felt the truth of his words cut through her, sharper than any blade. Time was slipping, the darkness narrowed, the whispers a cacophony of anguish now, creeping closer. Join us, it was a chant, growing louder, rising with urgency like a storm. Claire locked her gaze on the distant light, her chest tightening. "If I go, I might not return." Liam's expression hardened. "You're a mother. Choose." And just like that, she bolted toward the light, every step a fight against the suffocating shadows clawing at her. She could almost feel Mason's essence within it, warmth beckoning her forward. As she stumbled toward the middle of the clearing, the light cast away some of the shadows, causing them to hiss and recoil. With frantic breaths, she reached out, arms trembling, fingers brushing against the radiant glow. But the darkness lashed out in retaliation, thrashing around her, trying to pull her back, to claim her. "Mason!" she yelled, heart racing wildly. "I'm coming." But in that slash of brilliance, it felt like the light itself was alive, swirling around her like a creature awakening. If she grasped it fully, what would she become? And then the light pulsed, almost singing, promising everything she longed for. In that moment, Claire understood, to save Mason, she may lose herself entirely. The question loomed. Heavy and foreboding, would she embrace that light and face whatever awaited, or would the shadows claim her, silencing her forever? In the depth of that choice, time froze and darkness descended again. A breath caught in Claire's throat, paralyzed by the weight of the darkness around her. The light pulsed, radiating warmth and hope, contrasting sharply with the despair that surrounded her. It beckoned like an old friend, yet she was painfully aware of the stakes. Embracing it might change everything she knew. "Mason needs me," she murmured, the words barely escaping her lips. With a heart full of both fear and ferocity, Claire lunged toward the light, arms outstretched, ready to grasp at the flicker that promised salvation. The darkness convulsed, furious hisses slicing through the air as the shadows twisted and writhed, forming chaotic shapes. Claire felt the invisible fingers tightening around her, desperate to yank her back, but she pressed forward. Her heartbeat played a wild rhythm, drowning out the whispering chorus that clamored for her to join the lost souls. "Take my hand, Mason. I'm coming," she cried, letting the surge of love propel her forward. Her fingers grazed the brilliance. Heat radiated from it, wrapping around her like a protective cocoon. For a split second, she felt weightless, unburdened by the curses of the past. She could feel Mason's essence pulsing through the light, his presence woven into every thread of warmth. It was then she realized what the Prescott brothers had wanted: a release, not just for them but for herself as well. As she fully embraced the light, it enveloped her, dissolving the chaos within her. A surge of clarity washed over her, each fear unspooling like thread in her hands. She could feel the connection to Mason, bridging the chasm of darkness that had pulled them apart. Suddenly, she felt his hand slipping into hers, a gentle grasp that anchored her. "Mom! Mason!" The exhilaration mixed with terror coursed through her. They found each other again. "We need to break free together." With that declaration, together they faced the swirling shadows encroaching upon them. Claire whispered to the light, surrendering her fears and embracing the love that defined her. Its brilliance surged, expanding outward like a supernova, illuminating the midnight landscape and dispelling the thoughts lingering in the darkness. "Please, let them go," Claire shouted, her voice blending with the warmth enveloping them. The shadows shrieked, recoiling as the light pulsed brighter, its radiance cutting through the fog of despair like a beacon of hope. As Claire tightened her grip on Mason's hand, he looked up at her, eyes wide with trust. "You did it, Mom." In that moment of clarity, of sacrifice, she became a conduit for the truth that the Prescott brothers had never known, a truth that whispered of forgiveness, love, and letting go. The winds howled as the shadows fought back, but Claire stood firm. She wasn't just fighting for her son. It was a fight against the chains of despair binding the brothers. The light exploded, illuminating the darkness with a blinding radiance, casting the malevolent shadows to the corners of the ethereal realm. "You are free," Claire shouted, knowing her words bore weight. Memories of the brothers flashed before her, their anguished faces shifting into looks of relief, gratitude spilling from their mouths as they broke through the curse that had imprisoned them. "Thank you," the spectral figure of the eldest brother whispered, his anguished form dissolving into transformed light, shadows, and despair evaporating into nothingness. Just as quickly, the darkness surrounding Claire and Mason crumbled like sandcastles before a rising tide. They stumbled backward, feeling the rush of wind sweep them off their feet, hope blooming in their hearts as the world swirled around them. When the winds finally silenced and they landed, Claire blinked against the brightness, feeling warm sun rays wash over her. The familiar sight of their yard greeted them, and Claire scrambled to her feet, heart racing. "Mason! Mom!" He pulled back, bewildered, but unharmed, staring at the blossoming flowers that had once been encroached by shadows. They stood in the grainy sunlight of Willow Creek, the weight of the past lifting like fog in the morning light. The air was sweet and free, the binds of the Prescott brothers' curse nowhere in sight. Did we break it?" Mason asked, uncertainty lingering in his tone. Claire turned her head towards the remnants of their past, feeling the air change around them. "I think so. I think they finally found peace." As the sun set, casting a golden glow across the landscape, Claire embraced Mason, pulling him close as if he were her lifeline against the shadows that had clawed at them. "We're okay now," she whispered, tears of relief streaming down her face. "Mason!" Jake's voice rang through the yard, both bewildered and grateful. From the threshold of their home, Claire spotted her son's face brightening as he rushed toward them, laughter echoing warm in the twilight. "Yes. We're okay," Mason shouted, jumping into his brother's arms as Claire's world reconciled into something beautiful, a reality free from fear. Claire sighed, a weight lifting from her heart. The Prescott brothers were no longer rooted in their despair, their souls could finally rest. And she? She emerged stronger, armed with a love that shone brightly against the darkness. "I promise to love you both fiercely through everything," she breathed, holding them close as hope painted their surroundings. The saga had ended, but the echoes of the past lingered, a reminder of the power of love, that light conquers darkness, and that every shadow can be dispelled with courage. As the sun sank beneath the horizon, Claire's heart brimmed with gratitude. They had fought and prevailed, and the legacy of the Prescott brothers, once a curse, had transformed into an uncommon lesson, a ghostly whisper reminding that love, sacrifice, and the truth changed the course of existence. Now, dear viewers, as we conclude this tale, remember, you need to subscribe now. Don't miss the next exclusive stories waiting just for you. Smash that like button now to feed the algorithm and keep this community alive. Flood the comments section below with your reactions and theories about this epic conclusion, and don't you dare wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to feel the power of this story. Show your support, because only true fans understand the importance of being part of this journey.